Good evening, everybody. This is Rob Mazak. I am a psychic medium, and I do a lot of different podcasts about a lot of different topics: metaphysical, spiritual, alternative, worldly, all kind of different things. And if you've listened to me before on any other podcast, you will realize that I don't really have a script. I just kind of start with a topic and go from the heart and see where this all leads and where it ends. And so sometimes it can be a very short podcast, and other times it can be a longer one. They tend to be around 30 minutes. So, this particular moment, I don't have a clock in front of me, so I'm not sure how long this is going to go. But I have a very interesting thing to talk about, and I don't even know what the right topic would be. But I had this experience reported to me yesterday. And so I am in the military, and I'm one of the people in charge of the Emergency Operations Center for my particular branch of service out of a camp in Austin, which we will not name, of course. I mean, most people could figure it out if they really wanted to. But I was given a report, rather, about some very strange happenings over the weekend. And I wasn't working per se, but I'm always on call, and I was the one that happened to have the phone line transferred to my phone. So I was the one that took the call, and I want to talk a little bit about that. And when you hear the story, a lot of people will probably believe, like most people would, that this particular individual was having some kind of psychotic break or some kind of mental illness, scenario or incident. And it could be. But I have some really interesting ideas about this particular experience that I wanted to talk about. So first of all, we'll talk about what happened. So this particular camp is not really difficult to get onto. Really, all you got to do is have an ID of some sort. And they don't really ask you where you're going, what you're doing. They just, hey, come on through. Great, you got an ID. Sometimes they check it in detail, sometimes they don't. Just like any military installation, I'm sure, after you've checked thousands of them a day, sometimes you get a little lackadaisical, if you will. I'm not saying that's what happened here. However, this guy managed to get through the gate. I guess he got through the gate or over the fence. I don't know. However, the camp is not really very occupied during the weekends. I mean, unless there's some units on there that have their drill weekend or their annual training or something. But this last weekend, yesterday, I guess it was yesterday, or I think it happened on Saturday. This is Sunday, so I guess it was yesterday. There wasn't a lot of people on the camp. Now, my particular organization, my branch, was doing some new recruit training, and so we had a decent number of people. So at first I was wondering, was this particular individual that showed up targeting our particular group for a reason? But then I really kind of put two and two together and realized, it probably has something to do with the fact that we might have been the only people that were outside doing any kind of activities, and in this case, this group was starting their morning formation for an activity and accountability and all that stuff. And this individual shows up, and I saw, I have a picture of him. Well, they sent a picture of him, I should say. And he looked to be about late teens, early 20s, not really very old, pretty young looking. I mean, I'm not sure what his real age is. I didn't get into that in the report. And he was, fairly thin, white guy, shoulder length hair. And apparently he came running up to our group, super sweaty because it's 1,000 degrees in Texas right now. Makes sense. But very, very afraid for his life. And so some of the senior leadership were pretty on top of things, and they brought him into the building, where our headquarters is, and kind of put him in a room it has a a bunch of glass windows and doors so everybody could see in, but he was kind of in a safe space. And so they left one person in there with him who made a really very interesting and detailed report that I received later on in the day. And so this guy was reporting that he was very fearful about his life being taken from him, being unalived, if I guess that's the political word these days. And that the reason for that was because a couple of years ago, apparently, according to this guy, I'm just going to tell the story. This guy apparently had no, he didn't have it. His sister was killed, reportedly by members of the Russian military that had come over to the United States and killed his sister, apparently a couple of years back. And he, in turn, tracked all of them down, according to his story, and killed all of those particular soldiers that did this dastardly deed. And so now they are once again seeking him out, and this is his story. And what was interesting though is he had this very elaborate story about having really top secret information that he could only report to the CIA. He kept asking to talk to somebody from the CIA. Now I can't imagine anybody that's, at least at first when I thought about this, that somebody that's would be linked with the CIA would think that anybody in a military organization, especially one like mine, would have any ties to the CIA, which, I mean, there may be, but by and large, that's not a normal thing. So, a lot of it kind of came across as very odd, of course. And he went on to say that his name was, I think it was Josh or something, but that he had a very secret name, which I'm not sure why he gave a secret name, but he called himself the Immortal Assassin. And it sounds like that name sounds like something you would see in a video game, of some sort. And I did look it up, and there are some movies and different things that have titles like that in them, so this could very well have been something that he just kind of latched onto because he's a gamer. I mean, not to stereotype people, but he looked very much like somebody that would be a gamer, because I know a lot of people that do that kind of stuff. I don't personally, and he went on to talk about the fact that he's been doing a lot of clandestine operations for the CIA. I think he even said the FBI across the globe, that he's killed many people. And apparently he was describing very gruesome and very vivid stories of the way he's murdered people, and he gave names, and he talked about how he did it. And he went on to brag about the fact that he could kill somebody simply with a plastic straw and how he would do it. Not directly across the carotid artery in the neck, but, straight up and down so you couldn't repair it, and on and on and on. And this guy just really kept building this story, and he just was very nervous and very, very adamant that he had to talk to the CIA. And in the report, the guy who wrote the most detailed one thought that this guy, in his opinion, was having a psychotic event. Sort of like somebody that might be a schizophrenic or something that didn't take his medication, or medication didn't work, or he doesn't take medication. The story went on and on. It got even deeper. And apparently they went ahead and called the security for the camp. They went over, and then when they showed up, the guy who was hanging out with them in the room did something very smart, because this guy really got nervous after these officers showed up. So he kind of played along with it and said, hey, you know what? These guys are actually CIA agents. They're only posing as regular security people so that they don't think that they don't want to blow your cover. Anyway, this guy got handcuffed. He got taken away. I don't know what the rest of the story is. And at face value, a lot of people would assume that this guy is, somebody that has a lot of mental issues, mental illness issues, and he very may well have lots of those. And I'm not discounting that, but it was interesting, in my line of business as a psychic and a medium, and talking to people. A lot of these things that this guy was talking about, I've heard from many different clients over all the years I've been doing this. And so it's not a strange story to me. I mean, I had a guy, for example, that came in. It's a little bit different, but this guy in his, 65, I think it was, and he said he was beginning to have memories resurface that he felt had been wiped out or erased earlier on in his life. And the more he talked about this story, I mean, it was pretty outlandish story, but I had done the research on this previously many years and looked at it and talked to other people about it. And he was basically describing the secret space program where they bring you in for 20 years, reset your body, put your consciousness into another body that's redone, and you're back in society. So it's called 20 and back, and that's kind of short version of it. And once I described to this fellow, for example, that what he was just telling me, or the story he was giving me, was very legitimate in my mind based on my research and all the other people that have talked about it. It really helped him not be settled, but it made him feel like he wasn't entirely crazy. And I also work with a lot of different clients that are very, by definition, very mentally unstable. And, I have some that are very bona fide schizophrenics. And to me, a schizophrenic is very similar to what this guy was presenting like. So a schizophrenic, in short, is someone that seems to be in tune or interacting with many different versions of reality or realities, whether it's many earth realities or other realities in general. And they have a lot of trouble deciphering which one is the actual one that they're living in. Now, by our account, being only tuned into one, we think that they're way out of touch and that the other realities are completely made up. And it may be the other way around. Maybe we're the ones that are the ones that are locked out and not gifted, and so I can understand where sometimes when you tell a story like this young man was saying or giving, that it is actually and absolutely real to them. And although it looks like just completely outlandish and ludicrous and silly, it may actually be completely real to them. And it may actually be reality. And this is what, the more I looked at this guy's picture and looked at the energy of the picture of this guy, I just, my intuition kept pinging me that, with questions, for example, it's like, what if everything this guy is talking about is actually accurate? What if he is actually telling the truth? Now, okay, before you think I'm crazy, let's talk about this, right? We see this all the time in movies. Let me give you a couple of examples. A Manchurian Candidate for an older movie. Movies about Jason Bourne, where they take, they take like a younger prodigy. They get children when they're, before they're 7, and they program them and they indoctrinate them and train their subconscious mind to do certain things that they may not even be aware that they're doing. And, because as a child, up until about the time you're 7, you are a wide open parachute, I guess is the right word to put it. And so everything that you, in your environment, your experiences, the way you're taught, the school, your parents, everything, even programming, right? Deliberate programming gets hardwired into your subconscious. And, after 7, and as you grow older, even if you get introduced to new things, it is a lot harder to reprogram your subconscious when you're older, and those recordings have been going for so long and so etched into your mind that it's very difficult to change that. So it's really not that far-fetched. I mean, if you look at reports of the amount of children that go missing every year, I mean, it's like in the United States, at least, it's like in the millions that go missing every year that are never found again. Who's to say that these children, for one, are probably being trafficked, but that some of these children are being brought into programs maybe just like this and used for very treacherous and crazy things for the agenda of governments or different agencies. I mean, it is entirely possible. And so, don't think I'm crazy, but we see it all the time in the movies, and we think it's just science fiction. But when I talk to as many clients as I do with experiences very much like this in real life, it's hard for me to discount a theory like that or an idea like that. I myself even grew up in a religious cult or commune that was very, very much aligned to what the Jim Jones organization in Guyana was like, without the Kool-Aid, of course, the suicide part at the end. And when I did my research later on in life, I realized that the leadership was interchangeable between the two organizations, mine and the Guyana. And so I very much know what it's like for people to try to program you. Fortunately, I was a little, I was more like 8 or 9 when I got in, and so it was a little more difficult to program somebody like myself. Not impossible, but it was something that I kind of escaped. I can't say that some of my siblings didn't get the brunt of that because they were much younger. And to program somebody, it's really not that difficult. I mean, even as an adult, you can do it. And the other thing that really kind of caught my mind is in this whole intuitive download, for lack of a better word, is that maybe this guy is someone that has perhaps jumped a timeline. Think about this, right? If there are multiple versions of us out there, or multiple versions of this reality as we know it, that are just a little bit different, every time we make a decision, a new one is created. And so there's, endless amounts of them. That's the idea anyway. And so sometimes we can accidentally, or we'll talk about this in a minute, but on purpose, skip timelines or go back or forward in time, or, and all that sounds a little crazy, but once again, it's in the movies, right? We look at movies and we watch movies and we get into these things that talk about time travel and all the paradoxes that go with it. If you go back in time and kill your grandfather, if you come back to the same timeline, you may not exist, right? So we could talk about that forever. But I have talked to lots of people, and I haven't had any direct experience with this. Well, sort of minimally, but I've talked to a lot of people, a lot of clients that have had these experiences where they found themselves in a different time, a different era, like in the 1800s, just momentarily, if nothing else, even if for a short time. It's just you kind of bleed over, you pop over, and what's really odd about that is, as I was starting to think about that, I just, for some reason, I decided I needed to kind of scroll through TikTok. TikTok's, if I'm going to look at social media, TikTok is kind of the better one for me because there's less censorship and there's a lot more, I would say, truths put on there. A lot of different things that are a lot more enlightening, and without a lot of people, trying to take it down and censoring it. And there was this story that popped up. I was just barely into, just a few little flips of the, as you go to TikTok, you flip it up or flip it down. I was going through them, like fourth or fifth one. This story just completely stopped me in my tracks. There was this story about a guy that was from the 1930s who was, for some reason, messing with time travel and trying to build time travel device, a time travel, it's hard to talk today, a time travel device. And actually apparently was having some success with a small version of it where he would take like pieces of metal and small things and kind of pass it through whatever portal or entrance that he had to this device, and they would simply disappear from this reality. And so he wanted to make something bigger where he would be able to himself walk through it and experiment. Now that's kind of a scary thought, right? But in this story, as I was watching it, I guess he was successful in building this device, and apparently when he turned it on and was trying to activate it, he kind of drained the electricity of the city. And, this sounds like something Nikola Tesla might have done, much earlier than that. Of course, he did very similar type things. But we're not here to talk about him. But I think what really, and eventually this guy was shut down, and he seemed to just disappear from this reality. He just disappeared, probably because they made him disappear. And he was probably fooling around with something that the government did not want him to do, which is, pretty common too. We see that in movies, we see that in reality. Well, whatever reality is, but that's a different subject too. But what really caught my eye on this story, when they flashed a picture of this individual, he looked almost identical to this kid that showed up on Saturday at this military camp that we're at. I mean, I had to just completely stop. My mouth was almost, my jaw dropped. I'm like, it's the same. It looks like the same guy. I'm not saying it's the same guy, but it looks just like this guy. So this is where I really started to kind of go down the alternative rabbit hole and go, maybe this guy did actually disappear, or go into a different timeline or a different dimension or a different whatever, and has found his way into this one and really doesn't understand it. And maybe they're still chasing him. I know I'm sounding crazy. I just kind of like to throw things, things like this out, ideas like this to make people think. I mean, I'm sure not everybody, many people out there have had time lapses and time jumps. And we also have lots of different movies and shows about timelines, like Back to the Future. Come on. They made, 4 of those now, I think? At least 3, but maybe 4. And we think it's just kind of a funny show, and, it's like, ha, ha, ha. But we talk about it. They put it in front of us. And if you know anything about the secrets of the universe, our governments are not allowed to hide anything from us. And so they do it in ways that make us more entertained than educated, right? And so we got Back to the Future. We had, back earlier in my days, we had Quantum Leap, where this guy just, he would pop into a different timeline, a different body, and he would have these experiences. The character was a white guy, right? But he might have found himself as a old black woman in a slave plantation back in the 1800s or whatever. He couldn't seem to get out of this loop in different timelines and different experiences. So it's out there, people. And so I just wanted to throw that idea out there. Now, the other thing I will say is, just because I saw a picture of this guy in this in this TikTok video that looked very eerily like the kid that I have the picture of from yesterday. Doesn't prove anything. It doesn't give any factual evidence to the idea that this could be this guy just crossed over and is lost in this reality, or many realities perhaps. And but it would make sense if they're chasing him, still trying to find him, and maybe he's been able to figure out how to hide in timelines. But sometimes what I've realized, not sometimes, but what I've realized is that occasionally we get little nudges like that from the universe, or our spirit guides, or however you look at the other side, that will help us to get some type of message. It doesn't mean that it's actuality. It could be symbolic, and perhaps it's just designed to get me, and perhaps you guys, as you listen to this, to think about things a little different, and not just to look at people that have supposed mental illnesses as people that are just crazy or not wired right, or just nutcases. They may very well be locked into some weirdness like this that we don't understand, and we may very well be the ones that are limited and only able to dial into one particular frequency of one reality that's in this endless pool of realities. So we may be the ones that are really crazy, the ones that are lost, and the other ones are just trying to find their way because they can see it all. They can experience it all. And I would imagine that the hard part would be to figure out how to survive and get along in a reality that doesn't make sense to you because there's so many other movies playing, so many other realities playing. That would be very difficult at best. Anyway, I wanted to challenge you guys with a little story, and thought that was interesting, and I didn't want to go by without really talking about it. And I was actually ready to go to bed, but I figured, I need to get this out of my brain and why it's fresh in my mind, and talk about this. And so there is a lot of strangeness out there, and if I can tell you guys, if you learn to meditate and learn to connect outside of yourself, you will see a lot of these very same things that I am talking about. I've been on many spiritual journeys, meditation journeys, whatever you like to call them, where there's much more strangeness than this, to be honest. And it's so much out there for the learning and the taking and the knowledge. If you feel like all those other people are just nutcases and crazy, maybe you ought to peek in and take a look yourself, just to see, get a taste of it and understand it. I'm not saying we want you to be crazy or labeled that way, because most of us wouldn't want to be. But oh my gosh, the amount of things I've seen and been shown, and the journeys and experiences I've had are just amazing. And it's hard to describe them. Many of them are hard to put into words. I don't even know how to do it sometimes. However, there is a vast world of opportunity, vast amounts of realities, timelines, dimensions, you name it. It's just everywhere. It surrounds us. We're embedded in it. But most of us, probably 95% or better of us, are only dialed into one frequency. And that's all we can experience. But trust me, there's much more. All right, I'm going to get off my soapbox. But as usual, I would really like to collaborate with you guys on some of these things. And I don't have a lot of people that take me up on this, but I would really like you guys to reach out to me, and let's have a conversation, and let's put our stories together and compare and talk about things, and hopefully we can come to some kind of consensus, because when more than one person talks about these things, there's more power in more than one telling a story. because then people tend to listen and pay attention, perk their senses up, and they're willing to listen. Anyway, if you go to my website at lifebymazak.com, lifebymazak.com, find my contact page, and there's a variety of ways to reach out to me. Hey, reach out to me or send me a message. Let's see if we can, get a conversation going and see what other kind of stories that are out there. And let's, like I said, let's collaborate. Anyway, I look forward to hearing from you guys, but you will definitely hear from me again. Stay strong and live your life.